So, Rooster Teeth has made a sea of content in the 18 years that they have been in business. From the popular and well-known shows like Red vs. Blue, the RT Podcast, and Ruby, to the niche ones like A Simple Walk into Mordor and RTES.
However, there was one type of production Rooster Teeth said they would never do, and that is a prank show. Well, what happens when they break that rule? I'm Mooncake.
And I'm Craig, and this is Social Disorder.
The story starts in 2014. Chris Damaris, a writer and director, and Aaron Marquis, a screenwriter and actor, got the idea for the show while at the gym. They pondered out what made a good show, and noticed that there were so many prank shows on YouTube that were shallow and mean-spirited. They criticized the fact that normal people were the ones being affected, so they decided to try their own prank show with Rooster Teeth. Except with this show, they would focus the pranks on each other, not innocent bystanders, and they would make it more of a competition than mean-spirited. But when they brought the project to Bernie, he was really unsure about making it since he wasn't a big fan of prank shows. Specifically, he was worried about a slippery slope, where the show would start off only bothering Chris and Aaron, but then escalate to affecting innocent people.
Regardless of Bernie's worries, the idea was approved, and they took to the streets of Austin to film a test episode. Not too long after the filming day, the duo didn't think they had anything special, but wanted to share it with the community regardless. This test episode debuted to the crowd attending RTX 2014 as a proof of concept on July 7th. Reception was so good that a full season was quickly greenlit, the test episode became the pilot episode, and additional episodes would shortly make their way to the public. On September 13th, the first episode of Social Disorder debuted. The production is a prank show, but the joke is always on them. Strangers are nothing but observers of Chris and Aaron's shenanigans. Every episode is a different challenge, ranging from asking people embarrassing questions to roaming the streets in absurd costumes. The cast had to consult a lawyer for every episode just to make sure they weren't overstepping some bounds. Luckily, with Texas being very lenient on filming restrictions, unlike places like California, they rarely overstepped those bounds. The winner of an episode is decided by whoever performs the best. Additionally, points are awarded throughout, but they have no overall purpose.
In the first episode, the body bag experiment, the cast had to drag a very suspicious-looking body bag across the city, but in reality, it only had the other person inside, which they had to drag all the way across Austin to the river, all while trying to avoid suspicion and trying to get strangers to help them. But not everyone was so helpful, and one guy even threatened to call the police. George, the construction worker, got suspicious of Aaron and instead of helping him, kept following him around and asking what was in the bag. In fact, Aaron said that he was afraid that George was actually going to kick his ass. I know he seems kind of annoying for pestering Aaron, but for real though, shout out to George the construction worker, keeping the streets safe, man. It was also a lot harder to drag each other than they thought, and it even took Aaron over half an hour to drag Chris only a couple blocks, so he ended up saying screw it and took a bus. But afterward, Aaron ran into a bit of a problem. While he was ordering ice cream, a cop came over and started feeling up Chris in the body bag, and when he opened it...
Oh, hello, officer.
You got some ID?
No, I don't have my ID. I'm naked.
Chris, did you give up?
Right. Sorry for filling you up like that.
So the cop laughed and sent them on their way.
In the second episode, the duo had to conduct a survey to strangers on the topic of sex. This episode was described as fairly easy to film, as they chose a location that was known for people just casually loitering around. Cameramen were able to easily blend in, with one of them donning a backpack and setting out a cup of money in front of him, pretending to be homeless. The following episode took place in the middle of a speed dating event. You can tell how it went because shortly after its release, the video reached #1 on Reddit's r/cringe page. Although the event was secretly set up by Rooster Teeth themselves, real people accepted the invite, and some even hooked up afterwards. Chris and Aaron like to joke that they think children were made because of their little show. Additionally, this episode is a really good example about how much Chris is able to get away with things because of his innocent physical appearance and awkward behavior. Near the end of the episode, he is tasked to stand up and make an announcement to the attendees. He states that he is married and is actively cheating on his spouse by being there. Instead of people getting angry and booing him, people begin to clap and cheer because of his honesty. This, in turn, made Aaron pretty frustrated.
In the next episode, Chris and Aaron had to play house owners holding a garage sale, but what made these sales different was they had to sell very specific, very suspicious stuff. Chris played a friend's super stalker, selling stuff like David Schwimmer's house plans and a Matthew Perry voodoo doll, and Aaron played a serial killer who murdered his victims and is now selling their teeth and hair. As you can imagine, Aaron's garage sale got some really weird looks from some very concerned people. In fact, One of these people was a police officer who was about twice Aaron's size. Nothing bad happened, but Chris was actually supposed to do a bit where he ran out of Aaron's house naked and covered in blood, playing one of his murder victims, and he was about to do this right as the cop was outside. But as soon as Chris saw that one of the people outside was a cop, he immediately stopped and was like, okay, let's not do the thing that'll get Aaron beaten to death and arrested. And on the other side, Chris was having a really hard time selling stuff, so he even had to tell a kid to lie to his mother about how much he wanted a VHS tape. This is actually really interesting because it shows the exception to Chris's awkwardness, making him seem innocent. Because he was playing a creepy stalker, his weirdness actually made it worse for him because it made him seem like he actually was a creepy stalker.
The 5th episode had the guys pretend to be limo drivers and tour guides. This one was noted as one of the worst episodes to film, as the limo they used was really old and didn't have any working air conditioner. The car would reach 100-degree temperatures, which would also cause the cameras to overheat and suddenly turn off. Also, during Chris's turn, he was told that the tour he was currently giving was going to last another 3 hours. The passengers did not like this. One got so disgruntled that they dumped their glass of wine in the tip jar when offered. This interaction then opened up a big moral conversation with the community.
It caused lots of arguing amongst fans in the comments, with some saying the guy was incredibly rude, and others saying that the rudeness was justified. But really, it's hard to make a judgment on this when we only have a snippet of the 3-hour tour. In those 3 hours of driving around, there must have been many moments where they could have asked to leave, so I wonder why they didn't. The limo ride was free, so it's not like they had a monetary obligation to stay. So if the guy was so upset that he was willing to do that to Chris, then why wouldn't he just get out? Especially because Chris and Aaron have emphasized that they don't want to hurt anyone and want the focus of the pranks to be on them, meaning if the strangers asked if they could leave, surely Chris and Aaron would have allowed it. However, his friend sitting next to him did seem to enjoy the ride, so maybe she was making him stay. Either way, I don't think it's right to call that guy or Chris rude because we don't know the full story.
To build on what Mooncake just said, we actually see in the episode a group of people leave midway through Aaron's tour. Aaron insisted that they stay a little longer so they could pull into a parking lot and bring them closer to their desired destination, but they still left anyway. All of this makes it really difficult to say whether the wine tip was justified or not. But don't worry. At the end of the ride, they are informed about the show, and their attitude pulled a complete 180. They willingly consented to their face being shown in the episode, and they said they now found the experience really funny and awesome to be a part of.
Finally, in the last episode, The Escaped Prisoner, the duo had to walk from the Austin police station to the train yard disguised as felons. The journey was around 1.5 miles long, and the entire time, Aaron was handcuffed wearing prisoner khakis, while Chris was handcuffed to a cop car door that he had to carry around. And while they did this, they had to somehow get $15 for the train ride out of there. They did let APD know what they were up to beforehand, but immediately after starting, Chris got stopped by a cop asking what the hell he was doing. But the crew jumped in and explained that they cleared it with the police department, so the cop was like, okay.
Once the first season was in the books, a few articles about the show were prominently shared, and the crew were given a dedicated panel at RTX 2015. The panel was a basic Q&A where fans would approach the microphone and ask the two a question, and from this panel, we actually get to learn a lot of insights and stories behind the show's production. After filming the body bag episode, Aaron would continually run into George due to the job site being right outside his apartment. One day, Aaron shouted across the street saying, "Hey, George!" and was given a suspicious look back as if he responded with, "That fucker got away with it." While on the subject of the body bag episode, Chris ran into the strangers he was hitting on again at a bar when he was going to John's birthday. Aaron said he shouldn't approach them due to their prior encounter, but Chris insisted. He sat next to them and immediately wasn't welcomed as they thought Chris was really weird. He then told them about the show and they became really into it and wanted to watch the episode. Aaron also ran into a stranger, this one being from the speed dating episode. She was under the impression that Aaron had to return to Britain as he was forced into speaking in an accent during the whole date. He then explained the show to them and they found it really funny.
A portion of the body bag episode was cut in order to not make APD look bad, because another police officer came up to them and was like, "Is there a body in that bag?" And the cast was like, no. And then the cop was like, alright, and then just drove off. We also found out that the house in the garage sale episode was filmed at Aaron's friend's house, and that the lovable bat cat was unfortunately not an Aaron Marquis original, as it was bought at Goodwill. And they also had the idea of making a Funhouse episode, specifically with James and Elise.
And lastly, the cast mentioned that their families never really felt disappointed about the show. Some really liked it. Chris said that his grandmother really loved the show, and shortly after she complimented it, she then began to hit on Aaron.
What did she say? She said, if I were 19, you wouldn't stand a chance.
Now, stories are all fun and good, but one more thing happened at this panel that was monumental.
The first episode of Season 2 was shown to the crowd, with the full season fully releasing on September 16th, 2015. But now, this season was different. The audience now had full control in deciding who won the episode through voting on Twitter and Facebook. And unlike in the first season, bonus reels were shown, and first members got to see the episodes early. And finally, the production value of the show was shot way up, and with it, the intensity of the pranks. Starting with the first episode, the yoga experiment. Here, Chris and Aaron held free yoga classes, except they came up with each other's outfits and lesson plans. So unsurprisingly, they had to do some pretty weird stuff, like Chris doing a keg stand, and Aaron covering himself in mayo, while the audience watched in horror and amazement. Some of the people were lame and left, but some of the people were cool and stayed, because they thought it was pretty funny. In fact, one of the people went up to their boyfriend and was like, "We should leave," and he responded like, "There's no way we're leaving, we gotta see what he does next." But a couple minutes after a group left, a post was made on the Austin subreddit about the yoga class, and the original poster was pretty angry. They didn't realize it was all a joke, and genuinely thought it was supposed to be a real yoga class, and was like, "The yoga class was a huge scam. The instructor was a sleazy drunk who was super unprofessional, chugging beers and mixing his own cocktails. I don't recommend." And people were responding like, "Nah dude, you should have stayed longer. It progressively got more and more funny." Then a little while later, it was revealed that the whole thing was a show.
The next episode had the cast take over a pet expo and try to sell their bizarre products to attendees. This episode is another good example that shows Chris's ability to get away with things because of his appearance and awkwardness, as he is tasked with trying to sell pet condoms.
Dog AIDS is a very prevalent problem in the dog community.
His awkward delivery and straight face makes the customers laugh a lot, and he actually walks away with a sale. Aaron also mentioned that he received a 3-minute-long voicemail from his mother after she watched the episode. He jokingly stated that her dog was watching alongside her, and it began to cry when the doggy gas chamber appeared on screen. Episode 3, City Council Proposals, saw the cast take to the streets and try to get signatures for insane petitions. The finale of the episode had Chris and Aaron promote some new and bizarre laws to the Austin City Council. This episode is seen by many as one of the biggest jumps in challenge difficulty. I mean, compare this one to the sex survey. It's eye-opening to see how far they've gone. Not only did they infiltrate the government, but they also took advantage of some of the rules for comedic effect. During Chris's proposal, he ends off by saying,
"If I had the council support, please say nothing."
The council are forced by law to remain silent, as they are prohibited from interjecting during a citizen proposal. Also, as a little side note, the only other people at the meeting Chris and Aaron took over were companies and corporations, thanking the city for welcoming them into their economical society.
In the next episode, Chris and Aaron had to give masterclass cooking lessons, but the twist is that they wrote each other's lesson plans. Aaron was cooking in the wild, teaching the class how to make delicious lizard steak and delectable rat roast, while Chris had to dress as a prisoner, teaching the class how to make authentic prison-style meals, such as cigarette ice cream and secret cake. The secret is that there's something hidden inside. And at the end of Chris's session, he ran around asking people to set him free, and one of them actually did it and knowingly set a prisoner free. It's pretty crazy that someone would do this, right? Like it defies all logic and reasoning? Well, you know what that means. Science tangent. Now, it may seem shocking and concerning that someone would actually free a prisoner just like that, but in reality, it's not as uncommon as you might think. The famous Milgram shock study was an example of this. In the study, there would be an experimenter, a participant, and a learner. The learner was then strapped to an electric shock machine that the participant was controlling, and was asked a series of test questions. Every time the learner got a question wrong, the participant would shock them, and every time, it got progressively more and more painful. It reached the point that the learner started screaming in agony and pounded on the wall to be let out. The participants, obviously being distressed, said that they didn't want to shock them anymore and that they should stop. And in response to this, the experimenter simply said, "It is absolutely essential that you continue." And because of that, the participants just continued shocking. Yep, that's all it took. The experimenter didn't even have to give any reasoning as to why they must continue, only that they must, and the participant obeyed and continued. Why? Because the experimenter was in a position of authority, and when an authority figure puts you on the spot and pressures you to do something, you're very likely to just obey and do it. The study was all a setup, and the learner was in on it, but it shows that people are willing to obey an authority figure even if they think it's wrong, simply because that person is in a higher position than them. And this is likely what happened in this episode of Social Disorder. Even though he was dressed as a prisoner, Chris was still in a higher position, standing on a stage and leading the class, meaning he still would have been perceived as an authority figure. So when Chris, as the authority figure, put that guy in the spot and pressured him, it's not that surprising that he obeyed.
Hopping back on track, the 5th episode had Chris and Aaron become independent artists and attend an auction, where they were tasked with trying to sell the insane paintings commissioned by the other person. The entire episode was filled with surprises and interesting parts to pick at. We noticed that some of the funniest yet unattractive pieces of art got the most bids, and interestingly enough, Aaron almost got double the amount of bids than Chris did. This could be because he decided to sell his stuff last. With Chris going first, it warmed up the crowd and non-verbally prepared them for the upcoming weirdness. If the episode just started out with Aaron painting himself, the reactions would be completely different than what we actually see. I mean, look at how popular he is with these guys. This episode is also really noteworthy, as they not only got some good content for the episode and provided a crowd with some entertainment and interesting artwork, but all the money raised during the auction went to the Austin Creative Alliance, a charity to help struggling artists in the Austin area and to promote equity and diversity in the city.
Next, the big season finale. This was easily the most brutal challenge in the entire show. The duo were forced to attend their 10-year high school reunion, but there was a catch. Aaron had to play a sleazy, down-in-his-luck slob who was constantly asking for money, while Chris had to play a crazy person who was in a sexual relationship with a mannequin. All the while, their old high school classmates were wondering, wow, that guy really fell hard, or wow, that guy's fucking crazy. As you can imagine, this was very mentally taxing on them, because they weren't just doing this with random people they'd never see again, but with people they knew, people they grew up with. Aaron was described as broken after the filming of this because he was so close with his peers, and Chris supposedly wanted to cry on his front porch because of the embarrassment. It was so bad that anytime Chris sees a clip of the episode, he shudders and gets horrible flashbacks. However, Chris was able to get in contact with most of his classmates and explain to them that it was all for a show and that he wasn't an actual mannequin fucker. But Aaron wasn't as lucky. He only got to tell a few of his classmates and said that he's most likely going to avoid the 20-year reunion.
Once the 2nd season completely wrapped, another article about the show is shared, and a Facebook Q&A with the two was held on November 12th of 2015. Like the RTX panel, this gave us a few more stories about the show that originally went untold. There were many instances where fans recognized the two during filming. The crew stated that those fans were very respectful, as they would whisper to the cast about them knowing who they were and would silently leave to avoid ruining the bit. Aaron additionally stated that he and Chris had made a few new friends with some of the strangers that have appeared in the show. Bernie later mentioned on the RT podcast that the grill that was used to make the grilled iguana for the cooking episode was later used by Gus in the steak-off. Hopefully that doesn't ruin the competition for you.
Chris also had quite the mindset in making the show. He would hide most of his info until mere hours before the shoot. In fact, he would be totally calm, serene, and at peace. Then, once the day the shoot came, he would go into a panic frenzy and lose his mind. And also, for some reason, he was very anal about which shirt he would wear during the episode. Also, Aaron actually ran into one of the strangers that appeared in the yoga episode at a coffee shop, who was the one that helped him pass the baby. The stranger took one look at Aaron and was like, nope, and left immediately. And finally, Chris was in a relationship with a person who found out about social disorder and became paranoid, thinking that the relationship was secretly a prank and was being filmed. But Chris immediately calmed them down, saying that the show had nothing to do with them hanging out. So as you can see, this show affected their personal lives quite a bit, and the question now is, will they do it again and make a season 3? Well, Chris and Aaron said that they're not opposed to making a 3rd season, but because they were busy working on Day 5 at the time, Social Disorder would have to be on hiatus.
However, with Aaron announcing his departure from Rooster Teeth on September 7th, 2018, there is currently no plans or interest in any more episodes or an additional season. This was later confirmed by Chris through direct messages. He also mentioned that the two were happy and content with the content they had made thus far, and were more than fine leaving it where it's at if timing didn't work out or more episodes were unfeasible.
Although it's extremely niche and only has 12 episodes, Social Disorder has a very special place in the company's history. It's actually one of the few Rooster Teeth shows that got greenlit for a TV pilot, which Chris and Aaron worked really hard on. Unfortunately, after being shot and completed, the network later turned it down.
But it also made an impact on a personal level. Chris and Aaron said that the show ultimately made them more comfortable with being embarrassed, meaning that they're way more braver in making content. They say they can now have fun with something that should be stressing them out.
So, should you watch Social Disorder?
Well, I think so. The show is easily bingeable and can be watched in one sitting. Additionally, the chemistry between the two is unparalleled. There aren't many friendships in the world where you can physically and mentally torment the other person and still be extremely close with them.
I totally agree. While the show has some really yikes moments, it's by far one of the most creative and entertaining Rooster Teeth shows I've ever seen, so 100% recommend from me.
I personally recommend The Body Bag Experiment and The Escaped Prisoner.
And I recommend the Art Auction Prank War and the Pet Expo Competition.
But those are only our recommendations. Have you personally seen Social Disorder? And if so, what are some of your favorite moments? I'm curious. Let me know in the comments, and sincerely, thank you for watching.
Hey everyone, I make origin story videos for the Rooster Teeth crew. So if you want to know the origin story of Jeff, or how Gavin got hired at Achievement Hunter, come and visit my channel.